Nathaniel Green, 36, had always been the dependable one, the friend who could be called upon at any hour, the family member who never missed a gathering. He was the unassuming, quiet figure in the background, the one who never made waves. But as he stood in front of his bathroom mirror one morning, brushing his teeth, he felt a creeping sense of emptiness. It was as if a veil had lifted, and he suddenly saw his life for what it truly was, a series of hollow interactions and superficial relationships. For years, Nathaniel had been surrounded by people who seemed to care about him, but now, he realized they were mere acquaintances who used him when convenient. His friends only reached out when they needed something, whether it was a favor, a loan, or just someone to vent to. His family, too, treated him like an afterthought, never asking about his well-being or showing genuine concern. Nathaniel had been the quintessential nice guy, always accommodating, always putting others before himself. But now, it dawned on him that this selflessness had led to his erasure. He had become a ghost in his own life, existing solely to serve others without any real purpose or fulfillment of his own. Determined to break free from this cycle, Nathaniel decided to confront the reality of his relationships. He started by cutting ties with his so-called friends. He stopped answering their calls, ignored their texts, and politely declined invitations. As he distanced himself, he noticed a pattern. The people he once considered close didn't really care. They quickly moved on, finding new people to latch onto, barely noticing his absence. Next, Nathaniel turned his attention to his family. During a family dinner, he calmly explained that he felt like an outsider, that he needed more from them than just the occasional nod of acknowledgement. His words were met with incredulous stares and dismissive chuckles. His brother joked about him going through a midlife crisis, while his mother brushed off his concerns as a phase. His father remained silent, staring at his plate, refusing to engage. As Nathaniel continued to pull away, the backlash grew. His former friends and family began to gossip, spreading rumors that he was losing his mind. At work, colleagues who once barely acknowledged him suddenly became overly concerned, suggesting he take time off or seek counseling. The whispers became louder, and Nathaniel found himself under a microscope, his every action scrutinized and judged. Strangers, too, seemed to sense his vulnerability. In public, he noticed people giving him strange looks, whispering behind his back. It felt as if the entire world was in on some elaborate joke at his expense. The more he tried to assert his newfound boundaries, the more he was met with resistance and ridicule. Nathaniel's isolation grew. He began to question his sanity, wondering if perhaps he was the problem. Was he really losing his mind, as everyone seemed to imply? The weight of loneliness and doubt pressed down on him, and he found himself spiraling into despair. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, Nathaniel received a call from his childhood friend, David. David was the one person who had always seemed genuine, the only one Nathaniel had hesitated to cut off. But even David had drifted away over the years, busy with his own life and family. Nathaniel answered the call, hoping for some reassurance, some sign that he wasn't completely alone. But David's tone was distant, almost clinical. He spoke of hearing about Nathaniel's issues and expressed concern. It was clear that even David had heard the rumors, and his words felt more like an intervention than a conversation between old friends. Nathaniel felt a cold pit form in his stomach as David suggested he see a therapist, citing Nathaniel's recent behavior as troubling. Feeling betrayed and cornered, Nathaniel hung up the phone. The call had been the final straw, shattering any remaining illusions he had about genuine connections. He felt utterly alone, surrounded by a world that seemed bent on convincing him of his own insanity. In the days that followed, Nathaniel retreated further into himself. He stopped going to work, stopped answering the door, and disconnected his phone. He couldn't bear the thought of facing more judgment and scrutiny. His apartment became his sanctuary, a place where he could finally breathe without the weight of others' expectations. It was during this period of isolation that Nathaniel had a profound realization. In the quiet, he began to understand that his need for approval and connection had been his downfall. He had spent his entire life trying to fit into a world that had no room for his true self. The people he had surrounded himself with were not the problem, it was his own unwillingness to set boundaries and prioritize his own well-being. Nathaniel decided to start anew, to rebuild his life on his own terms. He reached out to a therapist, not because he believed the rumors about his sanity, but because he needed help navigating this new path. Through therapy, he began to understand the importance of self-respect and the need to surround himself with people who valued him for who he was, not for what he could do for them. As Nathaniel slowly re-entered the world, he did so with a newfound confidence. He learned to say no, to protect his energy, and to cultivate relationships that were genuine and reciprocal. The transition wasn't easy, there were moments of doubt and loneliness, but Nathaniel found strength in his authenticity. He discovered that true connections were built on mutual respect and understanding, not on convenience or utility. In time, Nathaniel rebuilt his life, finding a small circle of friends who appreciated him for who he truly was. He reconnected with hobbies and passions he had long neglected, and he found joy in the simple things, reading, painting, and long walks in nature. The world outside still buzzed with noise and judgment, but Nathaniel had found peace within himself. The whispers and rumors eventually faded as people moved on to the next topic of gossip. Nathaniel no longer cared about their opinions. He had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that his worth was not determined by others' perceptions. He was enough, just as he was. In the end, Nathaniel's journey was not just about breaking free from toxic relationships, it was about discovering his own strength and self-worth. He realized that the power to define his life lay within him, and that true happiness came from living authentically, without fear of judgment or rejection. And in that truth, Nathaniel found the peace and fulfillment he had been seeking all along.